with the feeling of a new beginning. I want to thank you for letting me be myself. Thank you for letting me feel so cool. Thank you for letting me feel so. That was the. That was the payoff. But the idea came from one of my bosses, my mentor. We never met. I just loved listening to him on the radio. He was the one that also now made me love music presentation. I've been listening to the radio for a long time, from the days of the Radio Fusion. But he had the big beat. Pa Benson Idonije. I was born in Lagos, and I shuttled Lagos and Ijebu for my secondary education. My elementary education was in Lagos. I'm a lawyer. Then Ijebu Grammar School, back to Lagos, Federal Ministry of Transport. And then my mom came back from France. I decided to relocate to Ibadan. And started my broadcasting career. I joined Radio Nigeria. And from there, with training and all of that. From there, I came to Abeokuta when state was created, and they had pioneers for the radio station, OGBC. So from 77 until 1993, when I formally retired and again returned to Lagos to now headline the first private radio station, Ray Power 100, and the planning of the television station. And then from there, life happened, and ended up in the US. And I was in the US for almost 20 years. And then I returned to Nigeria to try and see what is left for me to do, that I can do. And I found a very huge opportunity in allowing private radio to kind of explode. That is, it grew so fast. They ended up with a situation where they now need training input for most of their personnel. That's a very huge area. And I believe that there is a lot of opportunity in that direction. So somehow, soon, I expect to be a participant in that direction. It would be one of the good things I would love to do as a legacy activity for me, to interact with young people who are very creative, who have all the energy and are able to participate fully in broadcasting. But somehow the mentoring is missing, the training is missing, and they're not getting enough guidance to help them function the way they're supposed to. So I think that is where we are now in Nigeria.
I'm going to go back a little bit to the OGBC to FM project. And of course, I remember that you were the main brain behind that project. So where did that ingenious idea come from then?
It's just a project which the government has money to execute. And so it's not really anything other than to create a platform for entertainment for people, basically. The environment before GBC2 came was dominated by Radio Nigeria 2. We had a couple of stations then, Africa Number 1. You had Radio Rivers 2, which was an FM station. And then you now had, I think BCOS was FM. So basically, most broadcasting was on AM. So FM was, because of the fidelity, because of the kind of quality of sound, was dedicated to mostly music. So entertainment, basically. So when it was a kind of prestige project for the Ogun State government, they were close to Lagos. We basically play in the same airspace with Lagos. We were gracefully placed at the right spot when the idea came through, and the government needed to execute it. So I was head of presentation. We had been doing quite a bit of disco stuff on the radio. OGBC was the only station that stayed open until 1 a.m. One of those moments, I kept the station on all night, one night, after my late show at 1 a.m. I don't know what got into me on that day. I think it must went all the way into the morning. We were just blasting and just playing because there was no structured program. And we had these tons of discs with beautiful music. So we were just playing all night. I think it had to do with the season. There must have been a season, some of those seasonal celebrations. So we stayed all night, and somehow nobody took me up on it. They just left us, and we overran we overran the station. We were extended the use of equipment, but nobody said anything. So eventually, when the idea of FM station came, they now made it a baby of the presentation department because we were the people doing music mostly. So AM was dedicated to strictly talk and public enlightenment programs mostly. So this one was going to be entertainment. So I guess that's how we got given that assignment. Somehow we were able to give a good account. Because we became toast of, should I say, the Southwest, basically.
Yes.
We had this stream of visiting Americans, for instance, who came in tourist buses to Abeokuta to come and see who the guys were. We had a lot of prominent artists, Victor Waifo, Kolintin Ayinla, Sikiru Ayinde Barrister, Ebenezer Obey, King Sunny Ade, Madam Comfort Omoge. She came in Yoda Sawaba. What we found was we got friends in the entertainment industry who wanted to identify with us, and then they now helped us to promote our brand.
New brand, yes.
And suddenly we became the toast of everyone. And
absolutely.
Yes.
And also, you are so blessed, because I don't want to say you were so blessed. You are so blessed that you also managed to recruit youngsters who are also passionate about the work, because it wasn't even about the money then. It was more, the passion was there.
Yeah. The mantra at OGBC was, you serve the station like you were serving yourself. It is, you take the project as your own, as if it were yours. We were blessed at that time to have the types of people, Ambrose Shomide, Toun Okewale,
Yemi Sholaru,
Sholaru now, Yemi Adenuga. Yeah, we Waledo Sumo.
Yes.
Shai, yes.
It's
so Biola Soya, yes, that's Abati, Dr. Shu Wadada. And we had real committed programs people. These guys were into sports reporting.
Larry
Zamodi, yes.
Chechile.
So he would come in with his materials, and they were top notch. And we recognized that and gave him that platform at that time. And, that helped us to grow a lot of goodwill. This goodwill where people trusted us because we had this very powerful platform. That was what now led to people who were eyeing participation in the private broadcasting system, when the government was now sending very strong signals that they wanted to allow private people to come into broadcasting. Broadcasting came into Nigeria as a purely government-directed, government-owned institution. The British didn't want any in their colonies to dilute their message. They needed to have their messages undiluted in their colonies. So from 1930 to like 1993, about 60 something years, it was controlled by government until government now decided, okay, you know what? We think we can allow responsible citizens to participate. That was how this thing started. And then they now allowed people. So we were the first. And I believe this is very important. The way we approached what we did, because nobody thought it was possible to allow private people to handle sensitive things like the news, for instance. So people were thinking perhaps we would only be allowed to play music, and as long as we behaved ourselves, we will be allowed to stay on air. But there was no restriction whatsoever. We had news, we were doing everything, we were doing commentaries, we were doing everything.
Wow.
It just meant that at least within the diameter of the freedom given to us, we were able to behave ourselves and handle the tool in a responsible way. One of the things we had to deal with was the suspicion of government that could they, account for us. For instance, because at that time it was still fashionable for some soldiers to get together and take over government.
Yes. Yes.
So they were not sure, and the first thing they do is to go to a radio station and make that announcement.
Announcements, yes.
So they were not sure they could entrust that level of responsibility. Private people, the government-owned ones were always guarded. They had these tanks, sometimes at the approach or entrance of the station.
I remember we experienced that at a particular point in time. When the station was taking over, was a scary moment.
Yes. So handing that kind of freedom to a bunch of private citizens was a little bit risky, but we thank God that we were able to give a good account, and that has given birth to many more stations. Absolutely. And further liberalization of the industry, so that a lot of people, subject to perhaps background checks and all of that, are being handed that privilege to run radio stations and TV stations.
So, in case you're just joining us, this is the Community Bit, and my guest is no other person than Chief himself, Olusesan Ekisola. He's the doyen of the Nigerian broadcast media industry, and of course, you know him across the world. His broadcast media journey, like you said, began some years back, 1973. I was just 3 years then. Amazing that I came into the industry and
please be nice. I'm not that old.
We're still coming to that, Oga Mi, because I cannot believe it. I cannot believe it. I just want to remind everybody that he pioneered the first privately owned broadcasting station in Nigeria, talking about Ray Power 100 FM. He was the pioneer general manager. We're talking about DAAR Communications PLC, the owners of Ray Power. I want to ask a question, Oga Mi, because from OGBC, I remember you went to Ray Power, just like I mentioned now. How did you feel to leave OGBC and then going to start another journey all over? And how do you sum up the whole of that journey, looking back now?
Like they say, hindsight is always 20/20 vision. That is, you see clearer with the benefit of hindsight. I cannot tell you precisely this is the reason or this is not the reason. In the first place, there is never a right or wrong move in life. Whatever move you make is part of several moves that are in your destiny to make. Some moves you make, some moves you fail to make. When you fail to make certain moves, then you will not go where you're supposed to go. And all of these has nothing to do with deep thinking, ability to see into the future and all of that. No. It just tells you that that's why people say being at the right spot at the right time. Sometimes you don't know. You end up at the right spot having gone through certain challenges, which when you're going through them, you don't realize that's what the ultimate end is supposed to be. You go through some challenges and then you end up at a spot. All you're thinking of is that, oh, thank God I survived that. But you survived it because you're supposed to survive it to get to where you are so that you can take up the next one. Life is such a complex thing. So leaving OGBC 2 at the time I did was the time already prescribed in my stars, if you like to put it that way, that I would leave. If I didn't leave at that time, I might go in a different direction. I might have gone south. I might not have achieved anything else in life. But because at that point it was time for me to move on, when it is time for you to do something, even if you have not thought about it, you will find the forces aligning to move you where you need to go, even though you may not even understand why you're going in that direction. Sometimes you go in certain directions and you never know why you have gone that way. It's just the fact that you are destined to go there. I am not saying that there's no room for proper thinking and planning and all of that. No, I am not saying that. Why did I end up in Ibadan? I ended up in Ibadan because my mom came back from France and decided she didn't want to stay in Lagos. And I wanted to join her. I wanted to be with her, just to spend time with her and my late sister then, be with them, have this kind of reunion.
Wow.
When I told my dad I was going to Ibadan, he was puzzled. Why are you going to Ibadan? I said, well, I just want to go to Ibadan. So I went to Ibadan. I got into Ibadan, while in Lagos, I was trying to get into the Polytechnic. Do you know that it was when I got into Ibadan that I was now able to go into the Polytechnic?
Wow. You were once accused some years ago, I think it was 1995, of attempting to cause disaffection among the armed forces of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And you were arrested and incarcerated for about 3 days. In fact, some international news media platform featured that story. And I know some people remember now, but what was the true story, Oga Mi?
Nothing much. I got ignorantly pushed into it. I wasn't the one that actually did it. I was just head of the station.
Oh.
And we used a story that involved a kind of clash between two arms of the armed forces. Somebody's brother was ill-treated. Basically, it's not ill treatment. The person was murdered and his resources stolen. He was coming into Nigeria from the US after a long sojourn in the US. The driver couldn't take him to his brother's place, which was a barracks along Badagry Expressway at about midnight. So he dropped off at a police station, which was the closest one was at Oshodi. But by the following morning, the cab driver found the dead body of his fare in the street and then went and reported to the brother, who came in with a detachment of soldiers and took over the police precinct. Yes. We didn't know. We just saw news. One of the reporters saw it in real time, saw the station occupied by soldiers and came and decided to write his report. And since, he saw it, we said, okay. So he used it. And eventually it created ripples within the system because it got to the point where soldiers and policemen were almost getting involved in a face-off, and it was going to be very ugly. By the time they got into Lagos and came for me, Lagos was awash with security personnel because it had become very dangerous. It was under General Abacha at the time. So by the time I was now taken to because we had a very good relationship with the police. I didn't realize anything. But I was the head of station. I was the head of the organization. My boss was not around. He was on a trip abroad. So I was invited and I went to see the CP, was subsequently charged and thrown into Fela's cell number 3 at Alagbo.
Wow. Celebrity cell.
We had, that cell also, I think, hosted Orlando Owo. And Papa Ajashi, because I saw their names written on the walls there.
Did you write your name too?
No. I was too scared. I was too scared. I saw people in leg chains, and having been debriefed, my belt was taken off so that I would kill myself. And, some things that I could use to harm myself are taken away from
Taken
me.
away.
And so I was now asked to proceed into the cell, and I wanted to walk in, and the guys in the cell said, "No, you can't do that." They said, he said, "You have to go back. You cannot walk into this place. You have to crawl on your all fours to come in." So they announced to their members, kickers, slappers, biters, come out.
Oh my Lord.
So I wasn't that I didn't have that much flesh on me, so I was ready. I was going to go to heaven on that day.
Oh no.
So I shut my eyes and that started to crawl into the cell, but they didn't touch me. After I crawled for a while, they asked me to stop and asked me to open my eyes and stand up. So I stood up, and they told me I had to bring state fees. State fees at that time was about 5,000 naira. It was a lot of money. It was a lot of money at that time, 5,000 naira. So I now told the head of admin to arrange for it. Otherwise, they were going to lock me up in the toilet throughout my stay in the cell, because they said everybody must pay the cell fee. They call it the state fee. Yeah, I am here today. I thank God.
Bless the Lord.
But it is also part of my journey. I was supposed to go through that. That showed me another aspect of life. Showed me another aspect of life, how people lived. And the people in leg chains were not the ferocious, the terrible people I was expecting them to be. They were just normal human beings. Yeah. Who perhaps took the wrong turn and had to be restrained one form or the other because of what they did. That person might have killed somebody, I don't know. But we were in the place, there was nobody slapping me around.
So, but what happened to the reporter? Was he arrested as well?
No, 3 of us were arrested. Femi Ojudu, Kunle Ajibade, and myself. Kunle Ajibade and Femi Ojudu at that time worked with AM News. It was a kind of, what do you call them now? Like, they were doing like bandits coming to strike and disappearing. So they brought out the stories and then disappeared. They would write their stories, meet at certain places, and then, print, publish, and disappear into thin air. Otherwise, but because of that story, we were all rounded up and placed in the only reason I got a little reprieve was because I was at the American Embassy, American Ambassador's residence the day before I was arrested for the July the 4th Independence Day celebrations. So where the story of the murdered individual was, also confirmed and all of that. So I think that was what led the government to now try to at least rescue the situation before it became terrible. Yeah.
What an experience.
Yes, it's a nice experience for me. And when I got back, my chairman and the rest roasted me for a while.
I'm going to ask this question quickly, 1, 2, and then I come to Ole's question. What can you say about the current standard of the broadcast media industry in Nigeria, Oga Mi, compared to the 70s, 80s, and maybe the 90s?
Yeah, well, it's obvious to everybody. There's a big problem, and the only way that can be addressed is for everybody to go back to the drawing board, training, guidance, mentoring, and those to be mentored should be humble enough to accept to be mentored. Otherwise, they'll keep going in the wrong direction. And it's very easy now to to have likes and retweets. But what is the substance of what you're putting out?
Okay.
What will people learn from what you're doing? It's very easy to do slapstick.
Yes.
Some of the things. They are contents, yes. Some people thrive on stuff like that. But how long? Ebenezer Obey's records, King Sunny Ade's records, some of the oldies we enjoy today were recorded so many decades ago. But they're still very nice and enjoyable now.
It's still relevant and
yes, most of what is being produced now, how many of those will see the light of day after 6 months, after a year? So don't even go to 10 years or 20 years. No, some of the songs, the drum can sound. You don't need to use your mouth to porokoto.
Okay. Well, let us say, if you're not that old, then let's go and play football, sir.
But yeah, I can do Sakama and J now. Go and sit down, John.
Thank you, Oga Mi. We shall celebrate you more and more by the grace of God.
Amen. Thank you. With the feeling of a new beginning, I want to thank you for letting me be myself. Thank you for letting me feel so cool. Thank you for letting me feel so